Joyce Woodworth. Welcome to the Spirit of Winona. Today we're at the Watkins Manor, which currently provides assisted living apartments for the elderly. It was recently a rest home known as the Watkins Home. However, several years ago it merged with the Winona Community Memorial Hospital under the Winona Health name. Last year, most of the residents moved to the new facility, Lake Winona Manor, on the hospital campus, and this building was renovated into apartments, and the name was changed to the Watkins Manor. The renovated building is attached to the most spectacular home in Winona. It was a private home completed in 1927 by the Paul Watkins family. The name, the Watkins Manor, is more fitting because it is the name that Paul Watkins gave it when he lived here. Today we're going to take a tour of the building, learn the history of the building, and find out what its purpose is today. Florence Watkins, wife of Paul Watkins, lived in the original manor home until her death in 1956. At that time, her children, with her blessing, gave the home to the Methodist Church to be used as a retirement home for the elderly. For the next 45 years, additions were added and changed to accommodate the changing needs of the retirement home. The last change took place over the past 2 years when the Watkins home merged with Winona Health and the facility changed from a nursing home to an assisted living facility. Sarah Blair tells us about the facility today. This is Sarah Blair, who's the head of marketing here at the Watkins Manor. Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
Now, Sarah, tell me what happened here. The last time I was walking in this building, there were little tiny rooms and maybe 2 people to 1 room, and it's really changed.
Yes.
So tell me what's gone on.
It has quite a bit. Kind of in a phase, we moved residents from the Watkins home, which was a nursing home, a 130-bed facility, and over the last summer, we moved residents over to the Lake Winona Manor, which is the nursing home now, formerly the CNR, and we came in and started just renovating and doing a lot of reconstruction on the building and creating the Watkins Manor Assisted Living.
It looks like you took 2 of the rooms together and made an apartment, right? Tell me about the apartments.
We actually have 9 different size apartments. The 1-bedroom apartment has a living room area. It has a kitchenette area that has a refrigerator and microwave, and then it has a bedroom that has a full bath, shower.
How many of these little apartments do you have?
We have 53 units altogether. It's apartment living, but we're there if you need us. We provide meals, we have a secure building, we have staff here 24 hours, we have the ability to call for help if you had an emergency. We provide housekeeping, we provide laundry, we do provide some medication management.
What does it cost to have an apartment here?
Again, because we have 9 different units, the prices vary from our smallest unit is, which is only 288 square feet, runs $13.30 a month. And then the largest unit that we have is 675 square feet, and it runs $26.20 a month.
And tell me about some of the activities that you have for the residents here.
Well, we have lots of activities. We have some structured activities that our therapeutic recreation staff do. They do outings, lunches, shopping. In the basement area, we have a large rec room that has some exercise equipment, and it has a garden area where people can do some planting and so forth. And then there's also down there where they can play cards and do different stuff. So we're real excited about that, and a lot of the residents have partaken in a lot of that. We have a weekly church service. We have bingo, card games, music, and then the residents themselves, because we have many common spaces where people can gather, can do their own thing. We have a billiards room, we have a couple different cards and puzzle rooms, lounges, library, computer rooms, so we have a lot of different things available.
Hazel Decker, one of the residents of the newly renovated assisted living apartments, tells us what living at Watkins Manor means to her.
I've lived here since the 1st of January.
Okay.
I was the first one to move in. But there's a lot of craft work done. I play cards some and play bingo at night and that.
So you really enjoy living
I
here?
really enjoy it, yeah.
What's the thing that you like the most here?
Well, I don't know, just everything. The people are nice. Of course, they were nice before where it came from.
Where did you come from?
I came from Kensington.
Okay.
That's a great place, too. I love it. I love it just as much as this, as far as that goes.
Okay.
It wasn't because I had to move. It was because I needed to move to a place where would help me, because I needed more help.
Assisted living is the primary focus of the Watkins Manor today. However, the second biggest advantage to all the residents would be the fact that they can share in the living space of this beautiful historic home. The original home was built by Paul Watkins. Construction began in 1924 and was complete in 1927 at a cost between $1.2 and $1.5 million. By today's standards, the house would be worth $12 to $15 million. Who in the world, in the middle of the nation's greatest depression, would have had enough money to build such a grand home? The Rockefellers, the Vanderbilts, the Gettys could have. These are all familiar names of wealthy Americans who hung on to their fortunes during the Depression. But in Winona, Minnesota, there was only one family that could have built this grand home, the Watkins family. Paul was the nephew of J.R. Watkins, the man who began the Watkins Empire. He was 24 years younger than his uncle, but he was highly respected by him. So much so that when Paul suggested that J.R. move his little liniment business from Plainview, Minnesota to Winona in 1885, J.R. listened. 7 years later, J.R. wrote his nephew telling him, "I think I'm on to something here," and requested that Paul leave his job in Columbus, Ohio, and join him at the Watkins Medical Company as his vice president. Paul, at 28 years of age, brought his wife Florence and 2-year-old son Roderick to join J.R. in Winona in 1892. They settled in a beautiful home on East 7th Street, which stood next to the lot they would eventually buy and build on, the fantastic Watkins Manor. Over the next 10 years, they would have 3 more children: Joseph, born in 1894, William in 1898, and Florence, born in 1903. Paul was an excellent businessman, as was his uncle, and the two of them worked well together, developing new products and expanding the business across the nation. In 1911, J.R. Watkins died suddenly while on his honeymoon in Jamaica. Paul became the president, a position he held until his death in 1931. Under his presidency, the company continued to grow, as did his wealth, allowing him to buy a magnificent summer home in Beverly, Massachusetts. The home, located near Boston, overlooked the Danvers River, where Paul and the family also enjoyed yachting. Paul and Florence had a great penchant for traveling in Europe. In a letter dated in 1910, Paul writes to J.R., who is on vacation in Jamaica, and asks his permission to take the summer off so he and his family could cruise to Europe. Even though Paul never owned any of the Watkins Company, he still amassed great wealth from the success of the company, which allowed him to travel, purchase great artifacts, and build fabulous homes. When J.R. Watkins died, he left 2/3 of the company to his daughter Grace, who was married to E.L. King, and 1/3 to his second wife, who happened to be E.L. King's mother. Thus, the King family enters the picture and owns the business. As president of Watkins in 1912, Paul finds himself in business with E.L. King, his cousin's husband. E.L. is the vice president, and the two of them work out a cushy deal where Paul will take the helm 6 months of the year, while E.L. and Grace live in their Florida home. E.L. will take the helm the other 6 months, while Paul and Florence travel around Europe. During his many trips, he began collecting artifacts from every European country, and he began developing in his mind the perfect home to display his art treasures. In 1924, he and architect Ralph Adams Cram began working on the English Tudor Manor House. It took nearly 4 years to construct. Every detail had a master's touch, and Florence and Paul demanded perfection with each. It was reported that Florence pointed out to the contractor, Mr. Starr, that one of the slate tiles on the roof was too pale and had to be replaced to match the others exactly. Because the tiles are interlocked, Mr. Starr's roofers had to remove a wedge of the heavy tiles from the top of the roof line to the offending tile to replace it. The roofing material they chose would last forever, however. These slate tiles altogether weigh 350,000 pounds and are held together by copper plating and copper screws. Throughout the house, we see examples of Florence and Paul's demand for perfection, and thankfully, not much has changed since the home was transposed from a private residence to assisted living quarters. The house is built in a T shape. The vertical of the T contains one room, the Great Hall, and the horizontal of the T contains the primary living space. The exterior of the building is constructed of Harvard brick with Bedford and Indiana limestone trim. If you look closely in various places around the house, you can find Paul and Florence's special touches, artifacts found somewhere in Europe over a 20-year span of traveling, searching and buying, and shipping back to Winona, Minnesota to decorate their dream home. The front of the building has two large gables with bayed windows on first and second floors, separated by a beautiful checkerboard design made in alternating Harvard and Bedford stone. We see this pattern on all sides of the house. There are small balconies below the top floor windows. The front of the house is basically symmetrical with an arched door at the center. This was the main entrance for visitors when the Watkins lived here, but is currently used only for special events in the Great Hall. The hand-wrought iron doors within the arch were designed by the architect Ralph Cram. Samuel Yellen of New York executed them. Above the gables are decorated finials made of Bedford stone. On each side of the gables we see small gargoyle faces. The terrace in front of the entrance doors is constructed of Matoi stones of many colors. There's also a terrace at the west end of the building which has the same stone. Below the leaded glass windows, two bronze lizards are hanging down in hopes of water once again pouring from their mouths into the marble basin below. The windows throughout the house contain medallions from monasteries and cathedrals throughout Europe. The window panes themselves were gathered from greenhouses in the Netherlands. If you look closely, you can see many different shades of color in the seemingly clear glass. These were assembled by an expert glazier from the East. He did a beautiful job of balancing touches of lavender, amber, and pink amongst the clear glass. On the west side of the house, an arched carport was designed for the chauffeur to drop off the family and guests. Beyond the carport, in the back of the house, stands the garage. The view through the carport's arch in front of the house shows the original Central School, which stood across the street until 1931, when it was torn down to make way for the new Central School. This carport has since been filled in to accommodate an enclosed walkway between the present addition and the original home. I'm currently standing with Beth Nelson, who is the director of Winona Health Assisted Living, and we are standing in a very unique spot here at Watkins Manor. This was the coach port for the coaches to come under when they would drop Mr. Watkins or Mrs. Watkins off to get into the manor house. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. Well, let's first talk about your job as the director of assisted living. Tell me what that encompasses.
Well, I'm in charge of this building, Watkins Manor, and all the nursing staff that are employed here, as well as the Roger Metz Manor and the Edith Miller Manor, which are over on the hospital campus.
Okay. Now you came from the Roger Metz Manor and the Edith Miller Manor into this great big, beautiful old manor. Tell me what it's like to work in this big old house.
I learn something new every day. This mansion has so many interesting features to it that every day I notice something new, or I learn, somebody tells me a story that they heard about the Watkins or something about the house. So every day I learn something new. This arch would have been, where the cars would have pulled up when the addition was put on in 1968, and it was used as a gift shop, and it will be used as a gift shop again. The auxiliary will be back and supplying it with both sundry items as well as gift items for the residents.
Now, have you been able in such a short time to learn a lot about the history of the manor house?
Yes, I have. I've been here for about 1.5 years now. I've done a lot of reading. I've been digging up photographs, digging in the vaults. There are 3 vaults here in the Winona Manor, and there's all kinds of treasures we've been finding. So I've really been putting together a lot of the history of the house.
Great. Now I understand that you're going to share some of those treasures with us, and you're going to give us a tour of the great big house.
I'd be glad to.
Okay, super.
Well, this is was the family's parlor. It has always been painted yellow. Mrs. Watkins wanted a golden room, I was told, and so it has always been painted yellow. We've kept that true to that historic point.
The bookcase behind us was installed in 1988 when a solarium was added between the manor house and the nursing care facility. The space originally held a window. In this picture, we also see one of the oriental rugs that were laid out throughout the house. In 1930, there were 500 rugs valued at $85,000 lying in each of the 39 rooms, hallways, and bathrooms. The Golden Room took on different looks throughout Florence's time. Different carpets were laid down, the drapes changed, and the baby grand piano moved from one side of the room to the other. But the walls always remained yellow. Now, you said that this is all painted, but what's underneath the yellow?
It is wood paneling, just as you find in the other parts of the house.
Okay, so this would be the same exact wood paneling that you would find in the dining room?
From what I understand, what I've been told, yes.
And it's painted yellow.
Yes, we have some photographs from when the house was being built, and in there is a gentleman on a ladder with a paintbrush painting this room. So I have proof that it was painted right from the start.
And tell me, there's something unique about the plaster ceilings as well.
Yes.
Tell me about
this
that.
was actually the last room finished when the house was built, because they used it as their plaster room, and all the ceilings were hand poured in this room, and then they were lifted up and attached to the ceiling.
All the ceilings throughout the whole house?
Any of the ceilings that are plaster ceilings, yes.
Wow.
They're beautiful. This one has just the border that's very intricate, but as you go out into the main hall, that ceiling is made up of individual panels, and inside each panel is a unique design. It has one of the 10 fireplaces in the home with the beautiful wood carving up above it of fruit and leaves.
The fireplace front is marble with a brick firebox. Over the fireplace is a Grinling Gibbons-type wood carving. The winged cherub looks upon the lovely Georgian-style room with an air of serenity. The parquet floor is a square Monticello pattern of black walnut. The chandeliers and wall sconces are all brass and original to the house. Notice the pineapple that hangs down at the bottom, which is a symbol of hospitality and is found in other places throughout the house. Tell me a little bit about the main hall when you first enter, or when you would have entered, because now you're not using the entrance, right?
We only use the main entrance now for special events, going on here in the parlor in the Great Hall. When you come in, the first thing you see are the iron gate doors, and those were handcrafted particularly for this house. And you come through those great doors, you'll notice a lot of the dark wood paneling, and again the carved borders. And again, the ceiling that is really very unique.
The doors at the entrance are the same as the doors across the hallway that lead to the Great Hall. Old English doors with carved linen fold pattern and a fantail at the top. The foot of the stairway begins here with an intricately carved newel post. The story goes that Paul Watkins had ordered pineapple tops for all the newel posts. One happened to be cracked when it arrived, so the head carpenter, Eric Larson from Winona, told Mr. Watkins he would carve another. He carved this beautiful piece with clustered oak leaves and acorns, a wonderful treasure created right here in Winona amongst all the European artifacts throughout the house. The floor is a checkered pattern with two marbles, a Swiss Alps marble of dark green and a French hot fill marble in a very light tan. There's a wealth of beautifully hand-carved wood in this room. The room happens to be very dimly lit, however, and requires a real strain of the eyes to appreciate. This is one of the oak hand-carved benches with a face at the top. Many of the carvings throughout the house have faces somewhere within, including this beautiful parquet inlay chair that sits in the hallway. The hallway is L-shaped. The reception room is the first room you enter, and to the right, beyond the parlor entrance, is a smaller hallway that has the stairway on one side and a group of hidden doors in the other. Behind these beautifully carved doors are an elevator, a telephone booth, and a closet. The ceiling in this room is the finest of all the molded plastered ceilings in the home. Every rectangle has an original and different design. The light comes from two iron lanterns hanging from the ceiling. The lantern holds a knight at each corner holding a shield, and large red silk tassels hang from the center.
And I believe those are the tassels that were originally on
Fabulous. What about the furniture in the main hall?
The furniture in the main hall is original furniture. There is a couple of large benches, very ornate, heavy, big furniture that probably could not go anywhere else because they need a big space to go into, but they're beautiful.
Okay, well, let's go take a look at the dining room.
Okay.
The dark paneled dining room lies opposite the golden parlor. Next week, we'll discover its hidden secret as well as finish the tour of this grand home. Please join me then for part 2 of the Watkins Manor. We'll learn more about the history of the home and more on the history of the Paul Watkins family. This has been Joyce Woodworth. Till then, enjoy the Spirit of Winona. Hello, I'm Joyce Woodworth. Welcome to the Spirit of Winona. In last week's show, we began a tour of the Watkins Manor, which is currently an assisted living facility managed by the Winona Health Organization. Small apartments and generous recreational space occupy the addition to the old Watkins Manor home. This English Tudor-style home was built as the private residence for Paul and Florence Watkins. In part 1 of the Watkins Manor show, we talked about the history of this family and their connection to the J.R. Watkins Company. J.R. Watkins died in 1911, at which time Paul, his nephew, became president of the Watkins Company. He and his family occupied the house directly next to where the manor house stands today. It was here where his 4 children grew up. They had a very privileged lifestyle, traveling around Europe with their parents as they collected the artifacts for their dream home to come. Roderick was the oldest of the children. He attended Harvard and lived in Winona most of his life. When the manor house was built, he was 37 years old. He was the only son to have lived in this grand home. Their daughter Florence also lived in the manor house. She was 24 when the house was completed. She lived here until her marriage to Roy Willard Walholm. They moved on in the 30s to Colorado Springs, Colorado. Joseph and William never lived in the manor house. Joseph in his 20s worked for the Packard Motor Car Company in Boston. During World War II, they both served in the armed forces. William was 29 when the manor house was built, and when Paul Watkins had their family home torn down, William used the lot to build another home for his family. This lovely home still stands next to the Watkins Manor. In this picture taken in Paris in 1915, we see William on the left at 17 years of age and Roderick on the right at age 25 traveling with their parents. In the 1930s, when the manor house was built, Roderick and William both worked for the Watkins Company. Roderick worked as a traffic and branch house supervisor and the supervisor of printing. He lived in the manor until 1936. Both William and Roderick were forced out of the company by the Kings. Mr. and Mrs. Paul Watkins moved into the manor house in 1927, along with their son Roderick and their daughter Florence. Paul, however, only enjoyed his dream home for 4 years. He died on Christmas Eve morning in 1931. In part 1 of the Paul Watkins History Show, I reported that Paul Watkins never owned any of the Watkins Company. However, since then, Paul's grandson informed me that Paul did indeed own 28% of the company. It was during the mid-30s when E.L. King was forcing out the remaining Watkins family that he tried to have the stock devalued by not paying dividends. After Paul's death, his family needed to sell the stock to cover debt and taxes. The Watkins family ended up suing the King family, winning and selling the stock to the Kings for its proper value. In 1936, when Roderick left the business, the Paul Watkins family was no longer associated with the company. And this was when the Kings became the sole owners. On our tour of the manor home in last week's show, we left off in the Golden Parlor. We looked at the very ornate reception hall and headed into the dining room, where we begin the second half of the tour of this spectacular home. This is the dining room, I understand, for the Watkins family. Yes. Fabulous room, all wood paneled. Do you know what kind of wood this is?
I'm not sure. I believe it might be a mahogany type wood. It's what you find throughout the whole house.
It's spectacular. Now, you must have had the ceiling repainted. It's in perfect condition.
No, actually, that is, I believe, the original painting.
Really?
On the ceiling, yes.
Oh, they did a beautiful job. And what about the light fixtures? They all, I think, are metal?
Yes, they're all the silver, and obviously probably need some polishing, but we'll get to that eventually.
Oh, they are wonderful.
But they are original.
And what about the fireplace? Now, this has wonderful hand-carved wood all the way around it.
And again, another marble hearth and another iron shield in the back with an angel carved in there.
It's darling. Now, I understand that there was a secret vault in this room somewhere.
Well, there is a vault here. This was the silver vault, but that wasn't really the secret one. The secret one is one of the panels over here on the other side of that dining room.
Really?
I've been told, and I have talked to people that have seen it open, but I understand that the rumor has it that the way to get it open is some combination of twisting candlesticks or light fixtures, and you do it in the right combination, and it'll pop open.
Wow. Isn't that spectacular?
Yes.
Well, can we take a look at this vault?
We sure can.
Okay.
And it's so nicely hidden behind the panel door that looks just like the rest of the paneling. But this is where they kept their silver. Big, heavy leaded doors.
The vault at one time was filled with silverware drawers, all layered in the special felt to protect silver from tarnishing. Today, the staff uses it to house their special papers. The beautiful hand-carved wood strips we see trimming the wood panels throughout the room was all imported. Any repair work on them was done in the Great Hall, which for 3 summers served as the carving and carpentry room. The double doors on the east side of the room lead to what used to be the Watkins family breakfast room and is now used for an office. The doors beyond the breakfast nook lead to what used to be the butler's pantry, the maid's dining room, and beyond that to the yellow and blue tiled kitchen, which currently houses a beauty parlor. The grandest room in the manor house was built at the back of the house. It looks very much like a cathedral. It is very Gothic in design, as we see by the windows on the outside. We enter the room from the reception hall past the beautiful hand-carved linen fold doors. During Watkins' time, you would walk through a set of wrought iron doors built by the famous craftsman Yellen from New York, and step upon one of the 500 oriental carpets throughout the house, including a royal Kashan carpet made in New York for $11,000, designed especially for this space. Now, Beth, this is the music room or the great room?
It was called the Great Hall or the Music Hall.
And this is attached actually on the back of the house. Everyone should have one of these attached to the back of their house. So tell me, what do you think Paul and Florence used it for?
It was used for music. It's really, if you've ever been here for any concert, it's a wonderful place to hear music. And primarily this room is here to house their Aeolian organ and the grand piano.
The organ was built and designed for the Watkins Manor in 1925 by the Aeolian Organ Company in the East. It took 5 boxcars to ship it to Winona and be reassembled in 1927. It was considered then to be one of the largest in the world. The console to the organ is located in the library portion of the room near the entrance. 4,000 pipes are behind the wall at the south end of the room. Behind the two smaller linen fold doors, which are intricately carved with musical instruments, lies the organ chamber with pipes as small as a pencil and ranging to 20-inch square wooden pipes. The pipes go from the top of the two-story room all the way down to the floor. 1,000 pipes are behind the wall in the minstrel's balcony, which is above the entrance to the room. And 1,000 pipes, which provide the echo, hang behind the fireplace. At the north end of the room is a Steinway concert grand piano, of which only 9 were built. It is unique in that it is 6 inches longer than normal to accommodate a player mechanism. The piano can be played from the organ.
They are connected to each other. And they both are players, and there are roles for both of them. So you could have, at one point in time, put a role in each of them and had them play together independently. The connection isn't working right now. We're hoping to get that repaired. We're hoping in the future to raise some money to get the organ and the piano back into, really good shape again and have regular concerts here.
The Great Hall today is not only used for the pleasure of its residents, but also for many community events. It was the perfect room for high tea. A group of women from the Hospital Auxiliary coordinated a lovely afternoon of visiting over tea, finger sandwiches, and fancy cookies. The event was held as a fundraiser for the residents at Lake Winona Manor. Their 2 sittings of 100 people each was very successful. The women had an elegant time reminiscent of another era. Florence Watkins seemed to be watching the event with pleasure. Betty Data, the chairperson of the committee, tells us the event was so well received that everyone hopes it will become a tradition.
We decided that having this tea would be just a wonderful experience for everyone in this beautiful big great hall at Watkins. It's breathtaking, the woodwork and the high ceilings and everything that goes along with the old days. And they have kept it in such a beautiful condition that we were thrilled to be able to have the tea here. And people keep saying, now, is this going to be a tradition? And maybe it will be.
Paul Watkins, whose portrait hangs near Florence's portrait in the Great Hall, was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and heart trouble in 1924. He was just beginning to build his manor house. Knowing the stress he was under, his family encouraged him not to build the home, but he continued relentlessly. Perhaps he looked into the future, to 2002, when generations to come would be enjoying this fantastic room.
Let's talk about the ceiling in here. It's a cathedral-looking ceiling. In fact, this whole room looks like a cathedral. Tell me something about the ceiling.
Well, the ceiling, the beams for the ceiling were intended to be keels for a ship. So I think that's a real neat architectural feature of it. And then, of course, they've added the carvings on the ends and really added much more to it. But
this room is filled with interesting features, many of which are of museum quality. An Aubusson tapestry hangs over the carved stone fireplace. The wrought iron andirons, which stand head tall for me, were also made by the ironworks craftsmaster Yellen from New York. The shield in the back of the fireplace dates from 1679. The tapestry that hangs in front of the 4,000 organ pipes is an old Flemish design. The organ screen is hand-carved wood, embellished with antique figurines from Italy. wooden cherubs with a religious theme. Below the screen stands 2 antique marble urns from the late 18th century, purchased from a gallery in Rome.
Beth, tell me about the flooring in this room.
The floor in here is a Rangoon teak wood, and it was all hand laid with the wooden pegs and toggles and keys. So it is a very remarkable floor. And over here we have what appears to be a chest. It is actually a wood box, and there's a dumbwaiter mechanism within it so that they could load the wood up for the fireplace down in the basement and have it elevatored up to the fireplace here.
Oh, fabulous. Seems like Paul thought of everything, didn't he?
He did. He thought of every little detail. In fact, I've heard stories that he could control the light switches from his bedroom, all the lights in the house. So when he decided it was time to go to bed, it was time to go to bed. All the lights went out.
Can we see his bedroom?
Yes, we can.
Okay, let's go.
Before heading up to Paul's bedroom suite, we pass the last room on the first floor, which currently houses a chapel for the residents of the Watkins Manor. It used to be the sunroom for the Watkins family. We pass through double arched doors with lovely stained glass windows. In it, we see some fantastic artifacts from Europe. A marble relief of 3 Italian artists who, to me, look like they might represent Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael, hangs on one side of the entrance, and an exquisitely carved marble relief of the Madonna and Child hangs on the other side. A perfect religious symbol for a chapel. Once again, I question whether Paul looked into the future and saw this room as a spiritual retreat. We go up the beautifully hand-carved oak stairway, past the leaded glass windows with inserts of knights in shining armor, dated in 1609. The stairwell is lighted by another of Yellen's wrought iron creations. All of the second-floor rooms or suites are or will be rented as an assisted living apartment.
Now, Beth, we're standing on the second floor, and tell me what suites are all on the second floor.
On this floor, we have Paul Watkins' suite here. There's a connecting door that would have led to Florence Watkins' suite. Also, then, is their daughter's much smaller suite. If we go this direction down the hallway, is some servants' quarters.
Okay. And what are we standing in right now?
We are standing in Paul Watkins' bedroom suite.
Paul used this room as his study in the short 4 years he lived in the home. His bed was located in the small room to the left, and his bathroom was behind the door on the right.
It's kind of hard to even decide what to talk about first in here.
It is spectacular room.
So many things strike you when you walk in. Of course, we've got the beautiful bay windows that are the same as what we have in the dining room and in the parlor. Again, we have a beautiful hand-poured plaster ceiling with a lot of detail. The silver chandelier and wall sconces. And what we're standing in front of here, this beautifully carved mantel with a marble fireplace. The detail on this is just incredible.
It really is. It's just fine detail.
The Elizabethan mantel is the only imported carved mantel in the house. It includes designs and figures from floor to ceiling. Parquet sections are recessed in a rectangle of layer upon layer of intricately carved wood strips. It truly is one of the most unique finds in the house.
It's something like I've never seen before. And then I noticed in every fireplace he has that shield in the back.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone is different.
And everyone is a beautiful design or picture on it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I can just see him picking out every single little detail.
He definitely was a man of details.
Mm-hmm.
He thought of everything.
Now tell me about his bathroom. I understand that's very unique.
Very unique. It has a beautiful bathtub, but it also has a shower, a walk-in shower that was put in, and the house was built in from 1925 to 1927, and it has jets all the way down the walls on the side because he didn't like to get his head wet. So way back then they had kind of the ultimate shower. He also has a scale that's actually built into the floor.
What's on the other side of the room besides the door to Florence's suite?
There is the entryway and a hall closet, and then there are two walk-in closets on either side of the fireplace that are loaded with drawers and cupboards and shelves.
Can we go through the door and see Florence's suite?
We can't go through that door
Okay.
because we rent these as separate units. That door is kept locked, but I can take you around to Florence's front door.
Okay.
Mr. and Mrs. Paul Watkins' suites were connected by a private hallway. Florence's boudoir is exactly the same size as Paul's suite, only hers has always been painted a bright color. The bay windows match the size of the golden parlors below this room. She chose crystal chandeliers and wall sconces for a touch of added elegance to the room. Her fireplace is surrounded by black Italian marble, and the firebox is built with a unique black brick. The door on the left leads to a dressing room full of wonderful storage space. And beyond that is a bathroom with walls, sink, and tub of black and gold Italian and Belgian marble. The fixtures in this room were once gold-plated. There's a small room off to the west of the boudoir where Florence had her bed. Mr. and Mrs. Watkins' daughter, Florence, also had a suite of rooms in the house, which were located at the west end of the second floor next to Florence Sr.'s suite. It was decorated in the finest furnishings of the day. Florence expressed to her family that she was afraid her friends came to see her house and not to see her. She was 24 when she moved into the manor. Shortly thereafter, her engagement was announced in the Republican Herald that she was to wed a doctor. However, to her family's dismay, she met a handsome playboy on a cruise and married him instead. The room today stands empty, waiting for a new tenant. However, some of the uniqueness of the room still exists. The window insert in this room has a storybook image in it, and whimsical touches designed for a young lady are seen in the light fixtures. The eye-catching frieze in the fireplace mantel is the most memorable artifact in the room. I'm sure Paul had his daughter in mind when he chose this lovely marble carving someplace in Europe. The top floor of the manor home contained the two guest rooms in the house which are now occupied. One was called the Colonial Room, and the other was the Chippendale Guest Room. Each had a set of twin beds and a lovely fireplace. A suite of rooms were designed at the east end of the house, which were occupied by Mr. and Mrs. Watkins' son, Roderick. He lived here as a single man until 1936, at which time he left the Watkins Company and moved to Chicago. 2 years later, he married a Winona girl whom he met at the post office, Gladys Anderson. She taught at the Winona Business College and was very active in community affairs. Eventually, the two of them moved into Roderick's suite in the manor home with their two children, Paul and Ruth. They lived there only a short time when Roderick bought the house next door that his brother William had built. Gladys was an important addition to the Watkins family. She was a close friend to Florence Sr. until her death in 1956. She was also a strong support to her husband Roderick until his death in 1963. She was also instrumental in preserving much of the history that is now available regarding the Watkins family until her death in 1990. Margaret Sater currently occupies 2 of the rooms of Roderick's suite. She talks to us about what it's like to live in the manor home today.
I love it.
Oh, how do you get upstairs? You've got 2 flights of stairs to climb.
I have a private elevator. I have the old one that's been here since 1924.
Is that right? And that's how you get upstairs?
Yep.
Okay. And tell me about living in the old Watkins Manor. How does it make you feel?
I can't imagine how it could have been to live in here with little kids And but it must have been a magnificent lifetime for them.
And then do you go downstairs to eat?
Yep, go downstairs for everything, for activities and whatever.
What kind of activities do they have here for you?
Well, they have a lot of card playing, and of course I'm kind of new at that, but they're very, very happy to have me learn. So, and I play various other games too, and some trivias, and they're interesting too.
And what's it like going to performances and activities in that great hall downstairs?
Oh, that's just wonderful.
Can you imagine how Florence must have felt living in the whole house?
Oh,
What do you think it was like back
I
then?
don't know. She must have been like a queen, I would think, but then when she was left all alone, her family was grown, and then her husband was here, and he passed away here, and she lived on a little longer, I think, in this home. And it must have been devastating for her because she has so many beautiful memories of what it was.
The home Paul occupied for 4 years and Florence for 29 truly was the grandest home of their era in Winona. And with the loving attention it is still receiving, the grandeur remains for all community members to enjoy. We end our tour in the basement of the home, which is designed in total contrast to the dark wood paneling of the first floor. Bright Spanish tile lines the stair rails and decorates the back of each stair riser. The wall is a white stucco with hand-painted tile inserts purchased in Spain and Italy. The floor of the hall is a brick red tile, and the fixtures are all Samuel Yellen creations. The hall leads to the billiard room.
Now, Beth, we're down in the basement, which nobody hardly ever sees.
Actually, this has become my favorite room in the house. For many years, it was used for storage when the nursing home was here. And when I saw it, I said, well, we're going to do something different with that room. It was designed as a billiards room, and there always has been a pool table here. And so we have set it up to, again, be a billiards room. But it's got wonderful, colorful tile. The woodworking is painted to match the tiles. Again, we're blessed with the original wall sconces and the overhead light here. This is one we just purchased. The original light fixture was gone here, so we tried to find something that would match the feel of the room. But we're hoping to use this room for a lot of social activities.
Oh, I'm sure the residents are going to love this room. I mean, again, you can see every detail is taken care of. Like, I'm impressed with the window wells. I mean, this is the basement level, and he still has crests in the paned windows and the window wells.
Medallions down here. And again, another beautiful tiled fireplace.
You must be having just a ball redecorating this home.
I am. It's been very fun.
And I'm so happy to see that you're trying to create and bring out the original beauty of the home.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful home, and I have tried very hard to stay within the feel of the home and keep it authentic. Even though the furniture isn't old that we're buying, I want it to fit in with the style of the home.
Well, I think we've been really lucky to have you with this project.
Oh, well, thank you. It's been very fun and very exciting for me. I've really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you, Beth, and thanks for taking us on such a lovely tour and for all the history points that you've been bringing out for us.
Well, I hope you can come back sometime, and I hope the public will come visit us sometime in the future when we get our concerts going, and they can enjoy this beautiful space also.
Sounds wonderful. And thank you for joining us today. Please join me again next week when we go a little bit further into the history of the Watkins family. This has been Joyce Woodworth at the Watkins Manor. Till then, enjoy the Spirit of Winona.